Hello and happy Friday. Welcome to the Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela Andrew, and today we are going to be talking about using external editors with Mylio Photos. This is one of my favorite things to do, and we get into creative image editing, which is so much fun. Mylio Photos has some great editing tools built in, but I'm going to show you how you can leverage external third-party editors if that's something that you want to do in your workflow. I'll walk you through all of the ways to do that and what you need to know to be successful in this session. Before we jump in, I do want to let you know that we have live Q&A events every single Tuesday and Thursday. Those are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. These are drop-in sessions where you can come and bring your questions, and we just call on people. They're very informal, and you just get a chance to ask your questions. And any question, whether it's a very simple question, maybe you're very new and you're just getting to know Mylio Photos, or you've been with us a while and you have a more in-depth question, everybody is welcome. So there's always something there to learn. And you know what, you guys teach me too. I learn stuff from you in different ways and different workflows. So even if you're not coming with a question, anybody is welcome to attend and listen in. On Fridays, we have these coffee breaks, which are at 11:30 p.m. or 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And next week, we are going to be talking about organizing by place. So we're going to talk about the map view. We're going to be talking about adding GPS information and the ways that you can get the most out of the map view. It's going to be a lot of fun, probably a shorter session because there's not as much to cover there, but we do get a lot of questions on GPS tagging. So we're going to focus in on that next week. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, which is external editing made easy. And we're going to talk about workflows with things like Photoshop, Luminar Neo, Radiant Photo, and this applies to pretty much any external editor that you have installed on your computer. These are just a handful of the ones that I use really frequently. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over some general settings and some steps to take as you edit. And then if you guys want to tell me towards the end what external editors you're using, if I have that installed on my computer, we can go ahead and do a quick walkthrough with each one of those. So just let me know what you use to edit. If I've got that installed, we will do a quick walkthrough with that. I've got Photoshop, I've got Luminar, I've got On1, I've got Radiant, probably others that I've forgotten about off the top of my head, but those are the ones that I personally use the most. So we can certainly walk through those examples. So let's go ahead and dive in. What we're going to cover today is why you might want to use an external editor, how external editing works, and not only how to get your pictures from Mylio Photos to an external editor, but how to get them back to Mylio Photos. And like I said, we're going to cover specifically Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop, Luminar Neo, On1 Photo Raw, and Radiant Photo. Those are some of my favorites, some of the ones that I think, based on my interactions and my conversations with you guys, that you use the most. But if there's others that you'd like us to showcase or demo, let us know and we can possibly do future sessions on those as well. So some of the reasons you might want to use an external editor is you get additional tools to work with. Mylio Photos has some great editing tools built in, but they're very simple. So you can see here in this screenshot, in this column here, these are the options we have available inside of Mylio Photos. And then as a comparison, just for example, I pulled the toolbar out of Luminar Neo. You can see there's far more tools. There's AI-based tools and so much more you can do with other programs. Mylio Photos is probably never going to be the best image editor out there. We strive to be the best image organizer and to give you access to your photos. And we want to do that really, really well. So we let other companies like Adobe, like Skylum with Luminar, like On1, really focus in on what they do well, which is that image editing. So we want to make it as easy as possible for you to get your pictures from Mylio to those other editors and then back into your Mylio Photos library. So you're going to use these programs for specialized capabilities that go beyond those basic adjustments, like creative photo editing and effects. Anything that involves pixel manipulation. So if you want to remove objects, you want to do, smoothing of skin and, removing blemishes or getting that piece of trash that you didn't even notice when you took the picture out of the foreground. These are all things and reasons that you might want to go to another editor. Also, if you are bringing in scanned family photos and you have some detailed photo restoration to do, Mylio is great at doing some basic color corrections. You can crop, you can rotate, things like that. But if an image is highly damaged, you've got scratches, tears, dust spots, Those are things that require pixel manipulation. And again, you're going to need to go to a different program to get those things done. Finally, there's a lot of really cool AI-based tools out there that are, they range from the basic edits to the creative to the surreal. And it's up to you how you want to use those, but they can be a lot of fun and they can also make your editing very, very fast. So these are all reasons that you might want to use an external editor. So let's go ahead and move forward into how external editing works with Mylio Photos. Basically what you do is you select the image or images that you want to work with. Some external applications let you open multiple files. Actually, most of the ones that I'm going to mention here do. And you can select one or many, go to the photo menu and you choose open with, and that lets you take that picture to any application that you want. So let me just switch over here quickly to Mylio. I have a picture here from Cannon Beach up in Oregon that I took a couple of years ago. And I want to edit this somewhere other than in Mylio. So I can go up here to the photo menu and choose open with, and it gives me a list of applications that are available on my computer. Now these are generated based on what you have your default file type set as for different things. So for instance, this is a CR3 file from my Canon camera, and I have the default set for this to be Photoshop. So that's definitely going to show up in the list. If you have another program that you use regularly, you can go into your file system and tell it, this is the program I use most often to work with this type of file, and that will ensure that it appears in this list. If you're not seeing the program that you want to work with, go down here to Other. This is on Mac, and you can just click Other, and it goes straight to your Applications folder, and you can find that other application. If you are on Windows, it's a little bit different, a little bit more complex, but you can add those other applications to this list. Those instructions are in the manual. And let's see here, I think Lori did put that edit with other applications article in there. Scroll down to the bottom of that article, it's in the chat, and that'll give you instructions for Windows on how to get those other applications into that list if you're not seeing them. So that's really it. You can go here, Photo, Open with, and in this case, we can say Open in Photoshop, and we're getting ready to go there. So let's go ahead and jump back to the presentation and talk a little bit about what these options are as you send them over to Photoshop or whatever application you choose. So in this option, this window, you have the choice to edit the original or edit a copy with Mylio adjustments. If you've done any edits inside of Mylio Photos that you want to take advantage of, so let's say maybe you did a little bit of a crop and rotate and a small color correction, and that's the one you want to build on with another editor, you would choose edit a copy with Mylio adjustments. In this scenario, I'm going to say choose a TIFF. I'm going to go with the Adobe RGB color space and a 16-bit depth. This is because the TIFF is going to be the file that gives you the most creative control. It has the most data. It's a very large file. It can be used for archival. Essentially, this is going to give you the best results while editing. PNG is kind of a medium. It's going to give you not quite as much editing flexibility as a TIFF, but it's a smaller file format, and it is still better than a JPEG. Editing a JPEG file, while you can do it, there's a lot of data there that you can work with. There's significantly less than a TIFF file. The other thing is every time you open and edit a JPEG file and you save it, it's actually losing data. So this is what we call a lossy file format, whereas TIFF is lossless, meaning you can reopen a TIFF, re-edit it, and you're not losing data. So when you want to do editing, I highly recommend working with TIFF files. Those are my favorite. PNGs are also a solid choice, smaller, a little less flexible. Avoid working with JPEGs where you can. So if you've done edits inside of Mylio Photos that you want to edit and take further, go ahead and choose this edit a copy with. If you have not done any edits in Mylio Photos and you want to start fresh in another application, you go ahead and choose edit original, and it takes that original unmodified file and opens it up in whatever application you chose. If you check this option to prefer the raw file if available, this really pertains to if you shoot raw plus JPEG images, Mylio can automatically stack those together. And if you have this unchecked and you have the JPEG showing on top, that could be opening the JPEG in your editor. So by checking this, this means make sure you're taking that raw version of the file to that external editor. This is on by default because that's what most of the time people want, but just so you know what that means. And then you go ahead and hit continue, and that's going to go ahead and launch whatever application you chose, in this case, Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw, and that's going to go ahead and pop that here onto the screen here in just a second. There we go. So once you've done edits to a picture, you can go ahead and save those things back to Mylio Photos. So I had already done a couple of edits to this picture. Let's just do a little bit more so we can see the difference. I'm actually going to go ahead and just make this a black and white so we can really tell. And I'm going to pull up the shadows a bit, bring in some more detail here, and maybe pull down the highlights. And let's go into our effects. Just run a little bit of dehaze, a bit of clarity, a little bit of texture. And again, I think I want to pull that exposure up a little bit more. There we go. This wouldn't be necessarily my finished edit, but this way you can actually see, once we get it back to Mylio, what the difference is. So let me jump really quick back over to the presentation, and let's talk about exporting these files back to Mylio. What you're going to want to do when you're ready is export your edits back to the same folder, ideally, where your original is stored. Now, this can really vary between different applications, and we're going to go into that a little bit more here in a minute. But in general, if you are presented with that option, you want to save it to the same folder as the original image lives. That way it's right next to Mylio, or right next to the original in Mylio. Mylio is already looking at that folder. It's going to scan it. It's going to automatically recognize that it's there. If it's not easy to get to your original folder, some applications don't make that very simple. That's when I typically go ahead and put this into the Mylio inbox, which you can see selected over here on the left. That's going to be in your favorites. That's also going to get it back in your library, and then you can move it to the appropriate folder once you're back in Mylio Photos. It's an extra step, but it does work. And this is, to me, much simpler than digging around in the file system to find a folder. When you're saving things back to Mylio, I like to recommend that you use a TIFF file. This is that larger archival file we were just talking about. And if you plan on doing any future edits, it's very much ideal. You can also save your edits as a JPEG. It's a smaller file. It's good for viewing and sharing. But if you plan on doing any future edits, it's not ideal because we talked about it. That's a lossy format, meaning every time you open a JPEG, make changes, and save it, you're losing data. So not ideal for future editing with JPEGs. If possible, and if you have the hard drive space, go for a TIFF as much as possible. Then you also have the option, if you want, with Mylio Photos, to stack that display image, that edited version, with your original. Now, if you're saving to the Mylio inbox, this is not an option, but if you're saving to the same folder, you can add _display to the end of your file name, and that tells Mylio Photos to stack that image with the original in Mylio. So you're going to see them, you're just going to see the one image in Mylio, but in the file system, you're going to have the unedited and the edited version. So that's an option that you have there. So let's take a look here at some of the examples with specific applications. And I'm going to start here with Photoshop since that's what I opened first. Now I have a couple of presets that I set up to make exporting really, really easy. And there's actually an article in the community that I wrote about this. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. Let me just copy that, and I'm going to pop that right into the chat. And this will tell you about those presets that I built if you want to go and learn a little bit more about this specific workflow, because we're not going to go as in depth as we did in that particular session. But when you're ready to export, you have the option here to save it in the same location, and you have the option to add that _display. When you do that, you're going to end up with, in Mylio, your edited picture, and under the file name, you're going to see it says, there's your raw image, there's my TIFF, which is my display with the _display, and of course my XMP file. If you look in the file system, this is what it looks like. There's the _display file. There's a CR3 file, that's my original, and my XMP. Now, something that Adobe is doing now with Camera Raw is they're adding in this extra ACR file. You might end up seeing this in your file system if you're using Adobe Camera Raw and Photoshop. This is if you're using any of their AI tools, any of those AI masks, if you're using the AI denoise, a lot of these different functions that are newer inside of Adobe Camera Raw use AI, and they save those to a separate sidecar. So one of the things to note is that XMP files are synced by Mylio Photos. So a lot of the edits you do in ACR are saved to the XMP, but anything related to AI is saved in these ACR files. XMP files can be synced by Mylio Photos. ACR files cannot. And we'll talk a little bit more about what to do about these files here in a few minutes, but that's worth noting that your edits are saved in the XMP and the ACR files. And that's part of why you want to create this display TIFF. So you have an edited version that is complete. So it archives your changes. And then these files here have those changes if you ever want to go back to that raw file and you need to re-edit. So that's some of the things that you need to know when you do this. And just a comparison here, if you want to have your files, instead of stacking them in Mylio, you want to see them side by side. Here's the edited and the unedited version of this beautiful wood duck. This is what it looks like in the file system. I have then my TIFF. It does not have that underscore display. There's my XMP, my CR3, and that ACR file. So it's just different file types, work differently with Mylio Photos, but when you put them back in the same folder, Mylio can then read them and bring them back in. So let's go ahead and just do a little quick example here. Got this image and I want to get this back to Mylio. So what I'm going to do is go up here and hit my export button. This brings up my options for export. Up here at the top, you want to make sure you say save in same location. And then if you want it to stack with your original, you can go ahead here under document name, add plus, and type in underscore display. And that's going to append that underscore display to the file name and tell Mylio, because it's in the same folder, to stack it with the original. If you want them side by side, do not put that there. That changes that, and they will then appear side by side. I like to choose the TIFF format like I mentioned. You can also choose a JPEG or something else if that's what you prefer. And then the rest of this is all optional to mess with. I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to go ahead and jump back over here to Mylio. And I'm going to go back to my grid. And very shortly, there it goes. There is my edited version right next to it. And that's because I did not add the underscore display. If I had added the underscore display, all I would see is the black and white, and it would be stacked on top of that original raw version. So hopefully that's making sense. Lori, are there any questions up to this point that need to be addressed?
Well, let's see here. I think we had one.
All right.
Yes. So Orlando said, I'd like to know how to double round trip. Example, Mylio to ACR to Topaz and then back.
So that's a little bit more advanced workflow. We can certainly talk a little bit about that at the end. But what I do in that particular instance is I'll open an ACR, then I'll go on into Photoshop and I use Topaz as a plugin in Photoshop. And then I do that there, save that file still as the TIFF, and then back into that original folder. But we can talk a little bit more about that at the end. But that's a great question. If you need to edit further, like if you want to go Mylio to ACR, back to Mylio, and then you want to take that TIFF file and then go and open it over in Topaz Photo AI, the workflow would be the exact same. So you would just go up to that photo open with on the TIFF and do your edits and round trip right back. All right, so let's jump back over here to the presentation. So we talked a little bit about Photoshop and Adobe Camera Raw. Let's talk a little bit about Luminar Neo. This is a really cool photo editor that I really enjoy using. But the one hiccup here is it does not give you the option to put your files back into the same folder where they came from. In this instance, this is where I choose to put them back into the Mylio inbox. What this does is it makes it much harder to stack things. So in this instance, I end up all the time with my pictures, my unedited and my edited next to each other instead of stacked. Personally, I'm okay with that. And then you would just manually move that file from the Mylio inbox into whatever folder you want inside of Mylio later on. As I said, saving the underscore display is tedious. And then as far as re-editing something, if you already have something in progress in Luminar and then you close it and you want to go back and pick up those edits where you left off, those edits are saved in their own separate database. And one thing to note about database files with other applications, be it Luminar Neo, be it On1, anything else, you want to make sure that those database files are not inside a folder that Mylio is watching. That can cause all sorts of problems. So typically they don't get put in there by default, but some people think, hey, I want Mylio to sync this. Mylio can't sync it. It tries to read it and it creates all sorts of problems. So do not place your Luminar catalog into a folder that's monitored by Mylio because it can cause some major conflicts. All right. Moving on then to On1, unless we've got any questions here with Luminar. It looks like one here from Stafford. Did you try that trick to put the image back into the same folder with Luminar Neo? You just have to get the folder where the original resides and paste that to the save location. Yes, I have done that. That's actually much easier to do on Windows than it is on Mac. All right. So moving on here to On1. Actually, looks like there was one other here from Rob. Let's see. If you stack and only see the edited photo in the folder, how do you access the unedited photo? Excellent question. So if you have them stacked, if you go ahead and right click on that image and say, or not right click, do the photo open with, and you check the prefer raw, that will relaunch that program, whatever program you chose, with the raw version of that file. So it will basically skip over that JPEG or TIFF display image and open your raw. Otherwise, you can just right click on it. A lot of times I'm just lazy. This is what I do. I right click on the file. Let me just go here to Mylio and show you. I would just right click on the file and say reveal in external or reveal in Finder. And then I would get to my unedited one that way. And you can always just right click on it there from the file system and say open in whatever you want to open. Either way works just fine. All right. So jumping back over here to Keynote. Brief time here with On1 Photo Raw. I know we have at least a couple of On1 users here. They do make it easier to save things back to the same location. They've got a great export menu. Again, you put it back in the same folder, and they save their edits as On1 files. These are not synced by Mylio Photos either. They can stay in that folder, but Mylio is not going to sync and back them up. So when you're looking at the file system with your edited picture from On1, you're going to see your original RAW. You're going to see your TIFF file, and if you chose to do it as a display image, it would have that underscore display. There's your XMP file with your metadata, and then there's that On1 file. So just to let you know what's in the file system, you don't need to do anything about this really. I just wanted you to know that it's there and that this is what it looks like. And then finally, we can talk a little bit about Radiant Photo. Again, they make it very easy to save both display images and to put things back in the same folder. And they too have their own sidecar for their edits. So in this case, I did it as a display image. Here is my display image, my original RAW. Here is a .radiant file, and then my XMP. So again, the .radiant files are not saved to your vaults, but the XMP files are. So that's something worth knowing there as well. Now, the next question I'm sure a lot of you are wondering is, okay, if these sidecar files aren't backed up to my vaults, how do I make sure those edits are backed up? So this is one reason that I do recommend creating the display image or saving a TIFF or a JPEG back to Mylio is you get an archival version of the edit as it stands at that moment. So you have a version that's edited that you can always get to. Mylio will back those up. The things that you're not going to back up are going to be those other sidecar files like the On1, the ACR, the .radiant. These will not sync to your vaults. They will just sit on your computer in the Mylio system folder, and that's just going to be where they live. Now, if you want to make sure that those are backed up, that is where doing some sort of system-wide backup is really important. So on your computer, there are a lot of other files besides your photos, besides the ones that Mylio is aware of, that you probably want to have backed up and protected. And these are probably falling in that category. So what I recommend is using some sort of system-wide backup solution. And the ones that I personally use, I use Time Machine. I'm on a Mac. So there's a built-in utility in Macs to go ahead and back up to an external drive. It backs up everything on your computer. And you can even tell it to back up your external drives as well if you've got a Time Machine drive that's big enough. So do that. Make sure that your computer files are being backed up somewhere else. If you're on Windows or even on Mac as well, you also have the option to add Backblaze, which is another service. This is a paid service, but I highly, highly recommend it. Mylio, we actually have some partnerships with them for our cloud service, but what they do for their computer backup is completely separate. So getting their computer backup is something I've used for many, many, many years. I recommend it for everybody. So if you are concerned about those other sidecar files that are not being backed up by Mylio, make sure you have a separate system-wide backup to make sure that those things are covered. All right, so I think that pretty much covers what I wanted to go over with getting your pictures out of Mylio to the third-party editor and back. I'm happy to do some key demos on different applications if you guys would like. And just to give you some key takeaways here to think about, if you are not using an external editor, but you're excited about some of these opportunities, they have some great capabilities that go beyond those basic adjustments, and they're a lot of fun. You can access any editing application on your computer from that photo open with option there in the menu. And I do recommend saving your edited images back to that same folder they came from when possible. If you can't, Mylio Inbox is a great second choice. And that's right there in your Finder or Explorer in that favorite section. If you like, you can add _display to your file name. That tells Mylio to stack it with your original. It's completely optional. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. I'm kind of on the fence whether I like it or not. So I kind of go back and forth, but that's completely up to you. And it's, it's just a good option to have. And then finally, make sure that if you're using other editors and they're creating those other sidecar files, that those are getting backed up separately using a system backup solution. One other thing that I do want to add is we do have it on our roadmap to eventually support syncing those sidecar files, but that's going to be a ways down the road. I would imagine we're probably at least a year or more out from that. So don't quote me on that, but it is something that we're considering and we really would like to do. But in the meantime, just make sure you've got that system backup to make sure those edits are being covered. All right. So what I'd like to do now is open the floor for questions, and we can do some individual demos on specific workflows if we want to do that. So let me go back and take a look at the chat and see what else we've got going on here. John says he uses On1, Radiant, and Affinity. Excellent. So I have On1 and Radiant. If you have any questions on those, let me know. I don't have Affinity installed, but it's, from what I understand, very similar to Photoshop. Let's see here. We can talk a little bit more about that, going from Mylio to Adobe Camera Raw and to Topaz and then back. So one of the things to know with Topaz, if you're going to Topaz Photo AI and you're wanting to upscale, meaning you're wanting to add pixels, make the picture bigger, you're going to want to go directly from Mylio to Topaz, not have Photoshop in the middle. That's going to be a better workflow. But in general, if you're just wanting to clean up noise and sharpen things like that, you can do that right from Photoshop. So let's go back here to Mylio. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab an image. Let's grab another one here from Cannon Beach. And I'm going to open with Photoshop and continue. And let's go ahead and just do a quick auto here. Maybe pull the shadows up a little bit more. And let's straighten that horizon because that's going to drive me crazy. There we go. And all right, so from here, let's say the next step I want to do is take this into Topaz Photo AI because maybe I shot it at a high ISO. Maybe I had to do a lot of increasing of the exposure and I've got a lot of noise in the shadows and I just want to do some cleanup. What I would do is go here to open. This opens it in full Photoshop. My personal workflow is to then make a copy of my layer. So Command J. I now have a copied layer. And then I can go up here to Filter, Topaz Labs, and Topaz Photo AI, and that launches it as a plugin right here with Photoshop. And that way it's all kind of contained, and this makes it really, really easy for me. We'll go ahead and let that load. Sometimes that takes a moment. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna just do a little quick edit here. And so it's sharpened. Great. Yeah, that actually added a bit of sharpness there. Awesome. So we'll save that back to Photoshop. Give it a second here and go back to Photoshop. And I now have my sharpened layer on top of my unsharpened layer. I can go ahead and just do a Command or Control S to save. Again, I save this as a TIFF and it's going automatically back to that same folder that it came from. And I can say save, or I can even stack this if I want. I can say _display, type that in, hit save, and then go back here to Mylio. And in a second here, it should pop up. There we go. There's my TIFF. And there we go. There's the edited version showing There's my CR3, my TIFF, my XMP. So that is how I integrate something like Topaz into that workflow. All right. So I think I got those couple of questions. Perfect. John says preferred image editors are Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. So John, I would be very cautious using Lightroom Classic in conjunction with Mylio because you have two separate cataloging applications that can be in conflict with each other. There are workflows that absolutely work. You can do it, but please be careful because if you go and you do edits in Lightroom and then you have metadata changes there, those metadata changes can then be in conflict with the metadata that Mylio has. Mylio will respect whatever Lightroom writes to it. Unfortunately, Lightroom does not. And you're probably going to notice later on, you're going to see metadata mismatch errors inside of Lightroom. And it's going to ask you, I see that this metadata was edited somewhere else. Which one do you want to keep? And unfortunately, if you pick, I want to add the one with Lightroom because maybe I did face tagging, maybe I added GPS information in Mylio. And in Lightroom, you say, okay, yeah, keep that information. It's then going to overwrite your edits in Lightroom. So just be cautious with that. We've got a great article in our manual about how to handle coming from Lightroom Classic and things that you need to consider. So just keep that in mind. If you're using the newer Lightroom and you're just browsing the file system and then exporting your edits like you do elsewhere here, that's totally fine. It doesn't have the same cataloging issues that Lightroom Classic does. So let me go ahead and pull this up real quick. I'm going to go here to the manual. And Lori might have already gotten ahead of me here and done this, but...
Yeah, there's a link in chat.
Awesome. Let me just grab it one more time since I'm already here and pop that into the chat. And hopefully that gives you some additional context as to why I'm a little hesitant to talk about using Lightroom Classic in conjunction with Mylio here. Like I said, it can be done. Actually, one of our teammates, he's actually our company data analyst. He's got an amazing workflow with Lightroom Classic and Mylio, but it is pretty complex and I would say probably more work than the average person wants to put in to keep those things straight. So just something to keep in mind. All right, so Harold says, if sidecars are on the laptop, can you simply copy them to your vault or the external drive on the desktop? Yeah, you can manually copy them. That can work. And it's not going to hurt anything. Those sidecar files aren't going to interfere with anything with Mylio. Mylio is just going to skip over them when it tries to sync. All right. And Lori's using Photoshop with Nik software plugins. Awesome. Do love those Nik software plugins. And Kathy's using Lightroom. Excellent. Love all that feedback. You guys are great. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for today?
I think Harold has a question about opening with Bridge to add keywords.
Oh, where did I miss that one?
Right above mine.
I don't see it. Did she send it directly to you?
Oh, it's Harold.
Oh, Harold.
11:56.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I answered that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault. Sorry.
I didn't see anything here about Bridge, though. I see the one about copying them to your vault, but I don't see anything about...
Nope.
Oh, there's Bridge.
Yeah.
I see it now. I'm just blind. All right, can you open Bridge to add keywords? Yeah, absolutely. So Bridge plays nice with metadata. Bridge is going to save those keywords to XMP. Mylio will read those just fine. Excellent question. Anything else?
Another note: when you face tag in Mylio, does that that goes in the XMP? Does it show as a keyword?
It does not. It's a different field in the XMP file. So if you go in and you were to look at the text file of the XMP, it's person shown, I think is where it shows. It does not show as a keyword though.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Anything else before we wrap up for today? Thank you for that nice comment. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap things up again for today. So just a reminder, we've got our live Q&A next Tuesday and Thursday. Hopefully you guys can join us. Those are always a lot of fun. I love the questions that you guys bring. You guys always make me think about my workflow in different ways because each one of you sees the way you organize things differently. And I so appreciate that. So hopefully you'll join me at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, Tuesday and Thursday. And then next Friday for coffee break, we'll talk about getting the most out of the map view and organizing by place. It's going to be a fun session. So hope to see you then. With that, I want to wish you guys a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Lori, for helping out in the chat. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Angela.
Bye, everybody.
Looks like Edward has a question.
Oh, Edward has a question.
You recommended.
Oh, you got your hand up, Edward. Sorry about that. Go for it.
No, I just put it up. You recommended that we edit with a TIFF and put it back in Mylio.
Yes.
Now, if I want to share that image and it's in Mylio as a TIFF, I want to send it as an email. The average person can't open an email in TIFF.
So all you have to do if you're wanting to send it from Mylio is go up here to the share button. If you choose email, you can go ahead and choose to email it as a JPEG, or what I usually prefer to do is just use the system clipboard. So I go here to the settings.
Oops, Angela, can you share your screen?
Oh, yeah. 1 second. Oh, goodness. All right. I forgot that I wasn't sharing screen. Okay, so go up here to the share. And you can just share to email if you're using Outlook or Apple Mail. If you're using a webmail, just go here to System Clipboard, and you can go ahead and choose a preset here. There actually is one in here for email, and that's a JPEG. Small, you can make that a medium if you prefer. Quality medium, color space. Share to System Clipboard, and that's just going to put it in your System Clipboard, and then you can go Command or Control V to paste, or up to the edit menu and paste in whatever application and paste that right into whatever email you're creating. So that's probably the easiest thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, exporting, if you want to do a different file type from a TIFF, it's super easy. All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you again so much for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun. I hope this was helpful and gave you guys some ideas on how to edit and how to successfully use this workflow with Mylio Photos and whatever tool you're coming with. So have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.